Mandelbaum of Lanterra Developments, and I'm here with my very, very good friend, Benjamin Tal, who's the Deputy Chief Economist of CIBC. Benjamin and I have spoken many times in the past. There is no more articulate spokesperson and observer of the economic scene in Toronto, in Canada, particularly the real estate industry, than Ben is. He speaks very often at very different economic, financial forums, and I have the pleasure of hosting Benjamin here to share with us your observations. Now, Benjamin, most of the people watching this will be in the real estate industry, and I think it's no secret that we've gone through some very tough times. So we're going to have a lot of topics to talk about, but let's maybe get to the end first. So when do you see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Actually, you are right. It has been a very difficult period, and people are still smiling in the industry. And when I say if you are smiling now, you will be smiling forever, because this industry went through the most significant test, economic test, since the 1991 recession over the past year. There is no question about it. We know exactly what's happening in the condo market. We know exactly what's happening in the pre-sale market. We know that investors are getting out of the market. Many of them are in negative cash flow. It has been a very difficult year. However, interest rates are going down. They will continue to go down. The Bank of Canada will be cutting interest rates, and that's actually very good. There will be a lot of pent-up demand being accumulated, and the fact that we are not building now means that there will not be enough supply a year or 2 years from now, and that's when I think the market will take off. So we have to go through another year in the condo space to make sure that there is equilibrium in the market. And if you are in the market for a condo now, I say the next year is your time, because after that it will be too late. Prices will rise. That's the way I see the situation. So I'm already seeing the light, quite frankly. I think, of course, we have the complications with Trump. We'll discuss Trump, of course. But I think he is going to make a lot of noise and will not bite a lot. And we have seen it already in the past 2 weeks. So I see the light. I see the Bank of Canada continuing to cut, and that will revive the real estate sector. This has been the most significant test since 1991, which was a major test.
Okay, well, as we're taping this, we had a threat of tariffs that got delayed. Just recently, Trump, I think yesterday, announced impending tariffs on steel and aluminum, which may have an effect on Canada. Canada itself is going through some political upheaval, and that's going to be playing itself out over the course of the year. So I think we have to kind of look at the issues separately. You mentioned interest rates, and I think the consensus is that they're heading down, which is great. But maybe let's focus on immigration for a minute, which I think is the lifeblood of the development industry. And there's a lot of confusion going on in terms of the political appetite for immigration, the status of the current immigrants in Canada, and what the prospects of future immigration and household growth, particularly in the GTA.
Absolutely, that's a very important question. And you know what, if you look at the chart of population growth in Canada, it went like that and then like that. It was a hockey stick. It went up from 1% to 3.5%. The average in the OECD is about 0.9% population growth per year. The average for Canada until now was about 1.1. All of a sudden you jump to 3.5. This was huge. This was too much of a good thing. And many of them, actually 90% of the increase, was non-permanent residents, foreign students, foreign workers, and many of them are here just to buy citizenship on a cheap. They're not even students. We all know the story. So this was a failure of immigration policy. The government itself is admitting that this was a failure. Now what they're trying to do is to slow it down back to about 1%. In fact, they would like to see negative growth, but they will not get negative growth. So let's put it in perspective and see what makes sense and what doesn't. Today, we have more than 1 million people that their visa is going to expire within the next few months. This means that theoretically they will be illegal, undocumented. It doesn't mean that they're going to leave. Now, the government is assuming that they will be leaving. We know that 90% of them will not be leaving. We are not going to deport them. I had a conversation with our immigration minister. We are not going to deport them. We are not willing to do so. We don't have the means to do so. That's not the story. The story is the following. Every year, we used to get 500,000 new immigrants from outside the country. Now we are cutting this number to 400,000. Fine. Out of the 400,000, the government now wants 40% to be arriving from Canada. So you are new immigrants arriving from Canada. How? You take all those non-permanent residents, foreign students, and you convert them to permanent residents. 40% out of the 400 will be coming from Canada, representing less demand for real estate, at least in the short term. And that's a good thing because the rental market cannot take it. I think this is the right thing to do. People who say that population growth will be slowing and that will slow down the real estate market don't get the point. The point is we are going back to normal. We are going to back to 1.5% coming from outside, coming from inside. That will be extremely beneficial for the real estate market. It will be healthy. 3.5% a year was unsustainable. However, this is the short-term pain. The long-term gain is that Canada is becoming young again. What I mean by that is that if you look at all other OECD countries, including the US, they are getting older. We have youth dividends because the age pyramid of Canada changed dramatically over the past 4 years. The last time we saw this kind of change was in 1957, the baby boomers. Back then they were babies. Now those are people in their 20s. They demand housing, they need stuff, they will get it over time. Over time, those non-permanent residents will become permanent residents. They will be buying houses and they will create demand. Canada is getting younger. This is the long-term benefit and the short-term pain. That's very exciting and that's very important if you are in real estate and beyond the next 2 years.
Will the Canadian government be able to engineer immigration to get the type of immigrants that they need for the labor market that is needed here in Canada?
That's what we are working on now. We are trying to change the point system to make sure that it makes sense. For example, take construction labor. We know that we have major shortage, and this shortage will get actually worse. Over the next 10 years, no less than 300,000 trades will retire. We need to replace them. Now, if you look at the apprentice story, it's actually going down, not up. And if you look at new immigrants, only 2%. 2% mark are in construction. We have to change it to 5, 6, 7%. So instead of being a problem, be the solution. That's something that requires a change in the point system. I think it's coming.
So the way that works is that if somebody is a skilled craftsman that we want, they'll get a bonus in their point system eligibility. Is that how it works?
Exactly. That's exactly it. You can do many other things. For example, take Nova Scotia. In Nova Scotia, if you are under 30 years old and you are going to construction, for the first $50,000 of your salary, no tax. I say use the tax system to encourage people to come to trades, to the industry. Women, only 7% of apprentices are women. This is a labor force that is underutilized. Many of them can be excellent trades. So we have a way to increase this number, and we have to break the negative stigma associated with trades. It can be done. It's done in places like Germany.
Okay, so hopefully immigration, once things settle down, will go back to normal and hopefully will contribute to household formation and new home demand in the GTA in the totality, both low-rise and high-rise, sort of with our sort of long-term goals, because that's the idea. All right. What about labor and employment generally, not just in the construction industry? We're coming off a very high industry interest rates, and it's not just real estate. A lot of businesses are suffering. How's employment coming along here?
The labor market is slowing. There is no question about it. Interest rates went up in order to see the labor market slowing. The unemployment rate was basically too low, although the Bank of Canada will not ever use this language, but that's exactly why they raise interest rates, to see the unemployment rate rising, the labor market slowing, and that's exactly what's happening. The labor market in Canada is not weak. It's weakening. It has been very, very strong. The unemployment rate was too low. Wages were rising too fast. That was inflationary. The government, the Bank of Canada, raised interest rates in order to slow down wage inflation, and that's exactly what's happening. So I will not say that the labor market is very weak. It's actually weakening, and that's exactly what the Bank of Canada would like to see. Now, for the next 6 months, I see the same situation. I don't see significant improvement. The bargaining power of labor has been diminishing relative to 2 years ago. But I think that with the magic of low interest rates and some acceleration in economic activity and the fog regarding Trump disappearing slowly, 2026 will be actually a strong year, I believe, for real estate and the economy as a whole.
Yeah, but staying with employment for a second, will wages keep pace with rising housing costs so that the affordability of housing could sort of stay in pace with what it costs to actually produce a home?
The bad news, Mark, no, I don't think so, and that's a problem. We have to fix it. I think that we have a situation in which the affordability crisis in Canada is real, and it's going to get worse if we don't do something about it. We need more houses. We need to build much more. We need incentives. We need incentives to condo builders. We need incentives to purpose-built rental developers. We need to build much more in order to ease the affordability crisis that we have. I had an opportunity to meet with the government, with the cabinet, and I told them, if we don't deal with this urgently, we are going to have some issues, like, pockets of civil unrest even, or anti-immigrant sentiments because you have to blame somebody. So the housing market is relatively weak now, but this is not the story for the housing market. The fundamentals are extremely strong. We need to build much more because demand is very strong, very healthy, and we need to see not only building more, but also creating an opportunity for wages to rise faster with productivity, which is a totally different story.
Just coming back to that point, we're in the development business, and the difficulty to get permits and the added costs that are added on literally every day by the government, you could write a book. And on one hand, everybody's talking about affordable housing. And I'm not talking about artificially affordable where you're subsidizing housing. I'm talking about just being able to produce a house at the regular cost with somebody be able to, normal average guy with an average wage could be able to afford that. Most of the costs that really are killing us today are government charges that could be significantly reduced if people were really serious about it. But I don't see that.
Welcome to my life and your life. That's exactly what we are dealing with. I think that it's something that we have to fight. We have to fight because those taxes are unsustainable. On the one hand, we are complaining that young people cannot even dream about owning a house or even renting. On the other hand, we are taxing housing construction like there is no tomorrow. Development charges are crazy. They have risen dramatically. They are way too high. We need to change the model. We need to change the act. We need to basically talk to politicians and say, listen, if people don't build, your development charges are zero because they are not building. So 0 times 0 is 0. What you need is to create the conditions for people to build. Development charges must be cut significantly, in many cases eliminated. I think that's significant. Property taxes are way too high. We need the private sector is not a problem. The private sector, private developers are the solution. And that's what governments have to get. I had many meetings with many politicians, and I was promised many times that things will be done, and nothing has been done. Very disappointing, but we have to continue to fight. The solution is very clear. We need to provide incentives to build. Otherwise, they are not building. Some of the largest home builders in this country are building more houses in the US than in Canada. That's not the way to go. We need to do it, and I totally agree with you, and I'll continue to fight on that.
All right. I think we have to wrap up some, but I would like to hear from you. You work for one of the major chartered banks in Canada, and I'm sure the leadership of the bank consults with you a lot in how to deal with the real estate book. How do you see liquidity and how the bank deals with real estate development companies and purchasers, the availability of credit, the availability of takeout mortgages? Banks are nervous about the market. They're nervous that they're way more vigilant than they ever were. How do you see that going forward?
Yes, I think it will improve because clearly people are nervous about the housing market. We are going through basically recessionary conditions. So we went through recessionary conditions in some elements of the housing market, and banks are in the business of making money and not taking crazy risk. At the same time, you can see that banks are developing relationship or keeping relationship with clients that have been there forever. Clients that are very, secured with high good conditions, high liquidity, all those forces are there. So if you have a relationship with the client, we are there for you. And that's the promise, and that's exactly what's happening. But if you have new players entering the market without too much past, then they will not be getting the same credit.
Are banks under pressure from the Bank of Canada or Feds to tighten up liquidity or tighten up their lending practices?
Not really, no. I think that banks basically have to make their own decisions regarding liquidity, and they are sticking with their existing clients and deepening relationship. That's basically what they do. Not too much pressure from the regulators.
Okay, one last question. It's been a great time, but it's what everybody's talking about. Is Trump good or bad for Canada?
Well, Trump is not good for Canada at this point, no question about it. I think that there will be more barking than biting, and we have seen it already. We have to realize that all those tariffs are going to hurt the U.S., East Base. Out of the 10 largest importing states, 8 of them are red states. He knows that there will be a lot of damage. So I think that the goal, and that's extremely important to understand, the ultimate goal is uncertainty, and the tool is chaos. If you have a CEO that is trying to expand, North America, Canada, Mexico, the US, at this point you will go to the US because who needs the headache? By creating uncertainty, you get what you want. If you're Trump, more business going to the US. So you can basically get the benefit of a tariff without the cost of a tariff because you're not really imposing it, you just talk about it. So I think there will be a lot of talking. Some of it will happen. I believe that the steel and aluminum will happen. But beyond that, it will not be as bad as perceived.
All right, this may be an unfair question, and there is obviously political dynamics now at the upper level of Canada, but how would you respond to Trump?
I will not be fighting him to the extent that people want to fight him. I think that we have to be smart. Let him believe that he wins. He wants us to buy more Americans, we'll buy more Americans. More defense. No problem about it. I think that if you start to fight with it, the way some people say you have to fight a bully with the force, we don't have the force. We are 1/10 of the size. We simply cannot fight Trump. We have to impose some tariffs, but only in ways that we can substitute and basically help some industries at home. But don't just go dollar for dollar because it doesn't make any sense. And give him the sense that he's actually winning and he will leave you alone. That's exactly what the Europeans have done.
I mean, there are industries that he has a beef about, like the dairy industry, where whether there's a subsidy or there's some sort of regulatory system where he perceives that Canadians have advantages.
Yes, and that's going to happen. So we're starting with steel and aluminum. We'll go through forestry. We'll go through dairy. And that will happen, unfortunately, the way it happened before. And that will be painful. It's not a macroeconomic story. It's a microeconomic story impacting those industries, but it will not impact the Bank of Canada in any significant way.
Okay, well, that's great. So, last word. Benjamin, are you looking forward to the future? Are you happy? Do you like what you see?
Absolutely. I think that, listen, we are going to have elections in Canada soon. That's important because this power vacuum is a major issue. We need to fix it to deal with Trump. I think Trump will be very disturbing when it comes to the economy in the next 6 months. Beyond that, I think things are going to stabilize. The fog of uncertainty will be lifted. And I think that 2026 or even late 2025 will be very strong.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I enjoy listening to you all the time. I learn a lot, and I'm sure our listeners will hear as well. And it's always great speaking to you. Thank you so much.
A pleasure. Thank you.